Hi guys, so today we're going to do 3.1b system of measurement. Now in Canada we have two systems that we use for measurement. One is the SI or metric system. The other one is the imperial system. So the SI system gets used around the world. There is basically the US and I think one other country maybe that still mainly use the imperial system. Everyone else has switched to the metric system just because it is so nice to use. So you'll notice that everything is powers of 10. So 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters. 1 meter is 100 centimeters. 1 centimeter is 10 millimeters. So powers of 10 all the way. The imperial system is a bunch of random numbers, is what it kind of looks like. So 1 mile is 1,760 yards. Like, why that? 1 yard is 3 feet. 1 foot is 12 inches. Now, where these numbers came from was originally our most convenient way of measuring was just using body parts, actually. So sneaking over a foot. So a foot is the length of your foot. A span is the length of the span of your hands. A hand is the width of your hand, and they still will often measure horses and say how many hands they are, so this many hands high. In the Bible, Noah's Ark was measured in cubits, and a cubit is the length of your forearm there. A yard, tip of your nose, the tip of your fingers. Fathoms, this many fathoms deep. The span of your arms. Inches, this distance on your thumb here. So very convenient to estimate how large things are. Now, you're going to obviously run into problems because what happens if my foot is bigger than your foot? Whose foot is a foot? So they did have to get standardized, and the US obviously will use standardized measurements, not put your foot up something. Now, a bunch of scientists got together in France a few hundred years ago and said to themselves, this is a very inconvenient way of measuring things. We want something that is easier, just easier to calculate instead of these weird numbers, this 12 inches to a foot and everything. So they came up with the meter. And the original definition of a meter was it was 1/10,000,000th of the circumference of the Earth. Now, scientists like being very precise, and the Earth is not a perfect sphere. So if you're going to measure 1/10,000,000th of the circumference of the Earth, it kind of matters where you're measuring. So recently, in our current definition, they've changed it. So 1 meter is now the distance traveled by light, this tiny fraction of a second while light is in a vacuum. Memorize this or anything, it's just a little tidbit, some facts. So SI system, imperial system. Now we're going to use conversion factors to convert between numbers in these two systems. Now in a lesson later, you are going to be going between metric and imperial. So for example, turning kilometers to miles, so on and so forth, but not this day. You won't be doing that today. So we're just going to be converting in between the metric system and in between the imperial system. So just like miles to yards and feet and inches, kilometers to meters or centimeters and millimeters. Now 12 centimeters to millimeters. Now, you're not going to have to set up a proportion for everything, but I do expect you to show your work. So 12 centimeters to millimeters. First, I need to know how many millimeters are in a centimeter. I need to look at a conversion factor. So how I'm going to go from one unit to another. So 1 centimeter is 10 millimeters. So if I have 12 centimeters, and I know that 1 centimeter is 10 millimeters, I just do 12 times 10, and I get 120. Okay, so I know you can do this in your head because it is an easy conversion, but I do want you to show your work, please. So for our next conversion, we have 16 meters, and we're going to millimeters. 1 meter is, if I check, 1,000 millimeters. So if I have 16 meters and 1 meter is 1,000 millimeters, I just need to times by 1,000 millimeters because there's 1,000 millimeters per meter, and I get 16,000 millimeters. I could have also turned this into a two-step question. I could have went from meters to centimeters and centimeters to millimeters if I could not remember that there's 1,000 millimeters in a meter. So I would do 16, and then there's 100 centimeters in a meter, and then there are 10 millimeters in a centimeter, and I get 16 times 100 times 10, which is the same thing. So move your decimal place over 3 times because I have 3 zeros and 16000. It doesn't, you'll see it doesn't really matter if you do one conversion or two conversions. Okay. Next, I'm going to use a proportion. So I am going to use proportions for the next one, even though you can probably figure it out in your head. So I'm going from 2 kilometers and I'm going into meters. So 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters. Here is my conversion factor. Now let's say I did not know whether I was going to multiply or divide. Say I'm like, well, I can't remember, is a kilometer bigger than a meter? Is a meter bigger than a kilometer? This happens more often than you think. So I'm going to actually set up a proportion. So remember setting up a proportion. I have 2 kilometers, and let's set it up top bottom. And I want to know how many meters that's going to be. So setting up your proportion, make sure your units line up. So kilometers on the top, meters on the bottom here. And here our conversion factor is just going to go right in there. So 1 kilometer is going to be 1,000 meters. Then recall solving for this one, multiply these two, divide by 1. So 2 times 1,000 divided by 1, I get 2,000 meters. Next one, same thing. We're going to set up a proportion again. So 0.065 meters, and I can actually set it up left and right this time. So 0.065 meters equals how many centimeters? And this time, my conversion factor is going to go on the bottom. So making sure my meters lines up with meters, my centimeters lines up with centimeters. The conversion factor is 1 meter is 100 centimeters. So 1 meter is 100 centimeters. And solving for this one, so multiply the 2 across and divide by the one that is across from your x. So 0.065 times 100, so moving your decimal place over, bloop, bloop, 1, 2. And I get 6.5 centimeters. Make sure that whatever method you choose, you are showing your work. So 76 feet into yards. And proportion again. So I'll do it top and down because I think that's the one that most people use. So 76 feet is going to be how many yards? Setting it up. So feet line up with feet, yards lines up with yards, and my conversion factor is going to go right here. Now, in 1 yard, I have 3 feet. So 1 yard, 3 feet. So once again, go and divide. So solving for this one, multiply, divide by the one across. So 76 divided by 3 this time. So this is one of the ones where we would not have multiplied it together. So far, all of our examples have been multiplying. This is one where we would have had to know to divide. So 76 divided by 3. And we get 25.3 repeating. Now, let's just round to 1 decimal place. So draw your line, take a peek over the wall, and we will have 25.3 yards. Next, we're going to turn 7 miles into yards. So our conversion factor for miles and yards is 1 mile is 1,760 yards. Now, if I have 7 miles, I'll do 7 times 1,760 and I will get my yards. So let's just do that. I won't set a proportion for this one. So I have 7 miles And I'm multiplying that by 1,760 because I have 1,760 yards for every mile. And we get 12,320 yards. Once again, just make sure you are showing your work. Whatever method you use, please show your work. For the next one, I'm going from inches to miles. If I take a look up at my conversion factors up here, you will notice that we do not have miles and inches conversion. I can go from miles to yards or miles to feet, but I cannot go directly from inches to miles. Now you can make a conversion yourself, but I'm not going to give it to you on the test. So you might have to remember how to do your conversions without a specific inches to miles conversion. Now, something that I could do, I know how many inches there are in a foot, or I know how many inches there are in a yard, and then I know how many yards and feet there are in miles. So I can either go from inches to feet and then feet to miles, or I can go inches to yards and then yards to miles, or I can even do a three-stepper. I could go from inches to feet and then from feet to yards and then from yards to miles. But who wants to do more work? I don't want to do more work. So what we're going to do is, here's my game plan. We're going to go from inches, and then we're going to go to feet, and then we're going to go from feet to miles. So this is going to be a two-step conversion. So I'm starting with 5,678 inches. I need to turn that into feet. So how many feet are going to be in there? So setting up my conversion, inches and feet. In 1 foot, there are 12 inches. So doing our calculation, solving for this one, multiply these two, divide by that one. So 5,678 times 1 divided by 12. And we get 473.1666, and that repeats feet. So this is how many feet that I have if I have 5,678 inches. Now, don't take this number out of your calculator, leave that number there. So don't round it or anything because we're not done yet. So I still need to go from feet to miles. So I have this many feet. How many miles is that? So setting up our proportion, lining up our units, feet and feet, miles and miles, taking a look up. 1 mile is 5,280 feet. And taking a look. So solving for miles, multiply these two, divide by the one across. I will be doing the number that I kept in my calculator, that 473.1666, so on and so forth, times 1 divided by 5,280. And get 0.08964, so on and so forth, miles. And we will want to round that. So let's round it just to here. So take a peek over the wall. We are going to have to round that 8 up to 0.09 miles is what 5,678 inches will be. For our last example, we are turning 5 kilometers into millimeters. If I take a look above, I do not have a kilometers to millimeters conversion, so this is going to be another at least two-stepper. So turning my kilometers to millimeters. My game plan is I'm going to take my kilometers, I'm going to turn that into meters, and then I'm going to turn that meters into millimeters. I could add an extra step in there and turn my meters into centimeters and centimeters into millimeters and get the same answer, but I don't want to make more work for myself. So I have my 5 kilometers. And I want to know, okay, how many meters is that going to be? So lining up our units, kilometers, meters. In 1 kilometer, I have 1,000 meters. So 5 times 1,000, I get 5,000 meters is my 5 kilometers. Now, I want to know how many millimeters that's going to be. So lining up my units, in 1 meter, I have 1,000 millimeters, and same thing. So solving for this one, I'll do 5,000 times 1,000 divided by 1. So 5,000 times 1,000, just add 3 more zeros, and I get 5 million. So there are 5 million millimeters in 5 kilometers. Much nicer calculations than up here with my inches and feet and yards and miles and so on and so forth, which is why we use the metric system. Now remember, whichever method you end up using, just make sure you are showing your work and you can get started on your worksheet. Have a good day, guys.